Welcome to Blue Collar Wealth Club. I am one of your hosts, Sheena White.
And I'm your other host, Jerry Garcia.
So today we're going to talk about my favorite topic ever, and that is profitability.
And more specifically, in this case, predictable profits and why predictable profits are actually much more important than higher revenue.
Yes. Yeah, I think so many times I see this with pretty much like every business owner ever. Like, how do I get more revenue, right? And so I even have this on my website, and I don't know where it originally came from, but not from me. And it says, revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot.
Right? That's what I have on my website. I totally dig it. I wish I knew who originally said it, because I'm a psycho for attribution.
I'm sure we can figure it out.
Yeah, I feel like it's like open source by now because it's been used by so many different people.
Yeah.
But anyways, I digress. The point is, revenue is fun to say to your friends, like, ooh, I have $1 million business. Yay, me. But even in like the consulting industry, I know somebody who they had a multi-million-dollar business and they were just working a ton and their profits were in the toilet. I was like, what? That's your margins? I'm like, woo, dude, that's not good. That's
I mean, yeah,
really
we've seen it as we're shopping for businesses, as we look at a business, you can see one company has revenue of $4 million and like a stellar discretionary earnings of 80,000, and you'll see another company that has revenue of 1.2 million and stellar discretionary earnings of 100,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, and even in my own company, many, many moons ago, I took it from 4% profit to 24% profit in a year. I mean, we literally revenue wise, we're flat year over year. Our revenue was flat, but our profit rose so much. There was an additional $100,000 in personal income. And so when our revenue's flat, then obviously we're doing the same amount of work. So it's not any harder. We just made a lot more money. And to me, I always say, like, don't scale chaos. Don't scale or don't, try to grow something that isn't profitable.
Right. I think you talk a lot about growing broke, and that's exactly what you mean.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're not paying attention to what's making you money or how to appropriately grow, then you're just growing chaos.
Yeah, for the sake of it. And then you're just going to be working more, you're going to be stressing more, more money, more problems kind of thing going on. And you're taking whatever you had and you're just like doubling all the bad. And so you really want to focus on profitability first and creating those predictable profits and knowing, the A plus B equals C before you are exponentialing your A plus B, because then you have an exponential of C. And if C is nothing but chaos and, confusion, you don't want an exponential of that.
Yeah, you have to be able to grow where it's smart. The 80-20 rule applies across pretty much every industry, every part of every industry where, 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of the work, right? And so if you're not paying attention to where that 20% is and you're just throwing all of your money at the same 100% of what you're already doing, you're not growing as fast as you could be. As if you're tracking things, if you're looking at it and say, all right, well, 80% of our revenue is coming from this one source, and that's only 20% of our clientele. Let's just get more of those types of clients because that's what's producing the most revenue. And then we can kind of cut out some of the stuff on the edges, and it'll actually make us more money for doing less work.
Yeah.
And that's the kind of stuff that I'm sure you guys did when you went from the 40,000 to the 140,000 in profit in 1 year on flat revenue.
Well, yeah, I mean, because it was more just deciding like, okay, what was actually making us money, right? What was the SKUs that were making us money? And when I did the analysis per the different types of projects we did, there was one single type of project that made us a lot. The margins they were good. Really, really good. And all the others, I mean, there was a couple that were fine. And then there was one that was like, we barely broke even. It was kind of poopy. So it's like we were, and we had originally been marketing that too. I'm like, why are we marketing this? It doesn't even make us any money. It's such like filler. It's like a filler flower. I mean, it keeps our guys busy.
Baby's breath.
It's carnations. It keeps our guys busy. It serves a purpose, all the things, but it doesn't make, we're not making profit there. So it's like, we're going to focus our marketing efforts over here on this really, really high margin item. And then if we get, if the carnations come, we'll put them in there when we need to just, make the schedule a little more robust.
Well, unless that's something that, is a way to introduce your services to a client, right? Like maybe that's the way that you get in the door, and that opens you up to upselling to this other thing that's much more profitable, much higher margin. But unless that's the case, it's really, like you said, it's a waste of time and resources.
Yeah, and in our case, it wasn't that. It was a totally different clientele, and it was a very different. It was a different ideal client, and so it just wasn't. It was basically a waste.
Yeah, and that's going to be the case with a lot of that. And when you start analyzing, and if you do take that deep dive and really analyze, where is most of our profit coming from? You can look. I mean, if you're doing your, if you're tracking your books, right, you're going to see a lot of this stuff, and you can see those SKUs and which ones are making you the most money. And then it becomes very easy. Like you said, why are we focusing on this? Why are we marketing this? This is not even a profitable venture for us. Let's just cut that out completely. And, you can still offer it, but it's realistically, like you said, just something if one of our clients who's doing the profitable work also needs that done, then maybe we do that as well.
Yeah, or if somebody calls and asks,
sure.
Or for if somebody has an old brochure or something like that, but it's not something, and we have it on the website, so whatever, it's great for SEO, all those sorts of things. We're not going to spend money marketing something that isn't highly profitable, because why would you, right? So really focusing on profits first. So Profit First is a book and a system, but I'm talking about a little bit different, just focusing on your profitability first. So many people focus on revenue first. How do I get more revenue? Which, when you're first starting out in business, when you're trying to get to that first $250K a year, I feel like if you haven't hit $250K a year, be revenue focused, be full on revenue focus, right? Because you have to get to that point.
You have to start somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, to just get, to even have enough data really to have analysis. Until you're at $250 a year, you really don't even have much to analyze.
Sure.
You just have, that's like the min. But then once you're up in there, especially when you get to like your first like $500,000, or if you're $1 million and above and you're not really deep diving in your analysis of the profitability, especially by SKU, you are leaving money on the table. This is where we need to focus on profitability, especially when you're right in that 1 to 2 million mark, because when you get above 2 million and you're not focusing on profitability, then you have a lot of work and not a lot of dollars coming your way. And that sounds terrible. It sounds awful. Don't do it.
Well, that's how you grow. Grow importantly, grow with the things. And as your company grows, you may see that there's a shift in the services that you're offering or the things that you do, because as you're growing, as you're analyzing these things, you're going to see that next growth level may be a little bit different than the previous one. And so you're going to make some changes. I mean, because that 80-20 will apply again.
Oh, yeah.
You're going to reanalyze. Okay, now what is my 80-20? Okay, well, actually, now this is become our new thing. Let's focus on this. And that's how you hit your next growth level.
Well, yeah, every level of business, like there's certain break points. So I kind of said a few of them. So 250, 500, $1 million, 2 million, 5 million, 10, 25, and 50 are all like break points. And what I mean by break point is that whatever got you there will not get you to the next level. And you will end up kind of like swirling. That's really the only way I can really describe it, or like bumping up against that next level to sometimes ad nauseum. I mean, maybe even for years on end, you can bump up against it, because unless you kind of retool, you're not going to go to that next level. And one of the things you have to retool is making sure you're super profitable, because that next level is going to take a certain level of investment. And unless you have either outside funding, maybe not, or profitability where you can self-fund, but usually unless you have profitability, you're not going to get outside funding. So either way, you got to have that profit in order to get the cash to infiltrate and to put into your business to funnel yourself up to that next level.
Yep, and your personnel may change too over the course of time, especially
not may, will.
in the management level. I know, just reading the book Second in Command, talking about COOs specifically, they say, the COO has to be very yin and yang with the CEO. And so the idea is that really a COO can really only handle about 2 doubles of revenue before what they did to get you there will probably no longer work, and you have to start looking for somebody who works with that larger scale business to order to hit that next level. And the demarcations that you gave out of 255, it's pretty much doubling revenue. That's where it is. And so your current COO, and obviously if you're a smaller business, I'm sure you don't have one.
Or maybe it's like an office manager or something, like whoever is your second in command.
Right. And that second in command can probably get you to 2 levels of doubling your profits before, unless they've grown themselves into some new things and done lots of training to get to that next level, they're probably going to become, not as useful for you moving forward. And so there's going to be a lot of analyzing as you're growing in order to stay profitable while you grow. Everything has to come into play.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, you have to look at all of your, your top level leadership, because I always say as you're growing, they need to grow or they need to go.
Right. Or maybe they just take on a different role in the company. Maybe their role is, director of operations, and somebody else becomes that second in command.
Yeah.
Or whatever the case may be. But the bottom line is, like you said, as you grow, people are going to have to either switch roles, or maybe they're no longer a good fit. And it doesn't have to mean that it's a bad breakup. It can be something where, like, a good COO will realize, or a good second in command will realize, like, hey, look, I don't think I'm capable of reaching that next level. If we're still growing, maybe my role has to change, or maybe it's time for me to, to go help a different company.
Yeah. Yeah. And you have to, and to be able to afford that next level human, again, you have to be profitable because you're going to have to make an investment in that next human, because you have to hire for where you're going, not where you are. So many people I see, they hire someone for the position today. But the thing is, if you're a high growth company and you're trying to, if you want to go to that next level in revenue, and in scale, you have to hire for tomorrow, not for today. And that person's maybe going to be a little more expensive. And so that's why we have to prioritize profitability from day one, right? As I said, when you're trying to get to that first 250 a year, okay, revenue focus, just do whatever you got to do, get the revenue in the door. But once you kind of hit that level where you're at that 20K a month and you're consistent, that's when you need to start focusing on, okay, how do I get more out of this? So then I can reinvest that into my business to get to 500, to get to $1 million. Then it's like, okay, now what's my next investment? Because every level takes another level of investment. And then you have to realize that in your profitability as you're going and kind of creating that cycle of invest, profit, invest, profit, invest, profit. Because revenue, there's a million ways to generate revenue. I mean, there's companies we watch Shark Tank a lot, and there's companies that have crazy revenue, and then they're like, yeah, we've had this many rounds of funds because we have no money.
Right.
And it's like, whoa, like, you're how far in the hole? And sometimes you can make it work. Uber has been making it work for a long time.
They have.
I think, did they finally turn a profit?
I think they finally did, but I'm not 100% certain.
Don't hold me on that one. I think they might have. But either way, if we go for the length that Uber's been in existence, that is a giant pit of money.
Right.
But you are not Uber. Sorry, you're not. And we have to focus on that profitability so we can really fund the business as we're scaling it.
Well, yeah, and it's your job as the CEO of your company. As the owner, you are more than likely the CEO. Mm-hmm. It's your vision. It's you who has to be the overseer of where this company is going, how it's growing, and make sure that everything's staying in alignment, because otherwise, the growth is going to be, it's not going to be as consistent. And you need to be able to make these tough decisions and take the reins and really direct your company the way that you want it to go. And whether that's with the people you have now or with making some changes, sometimes those are the decisions that have to be made if you're going to grow in a profitable way.
Yeah. And we want to grow profitably, right? It sounds fun to just be able to tell your friends that you're the CEO of a $10 million company. But honestly, I had a prospective client this one time that I did a cash flow story analysis for them. And they were a $15 million organization that had 2% profit. 2%.
That is awful.
Yeah, and they weren't paying themselves. So, yeah, I was like, how do you guys, like, how are you even making it? Because they were a commercial construction organization, and so they had a lot of retainage, and retainage is generally 10%. So if you're 2% profitable, 10% retainage, $15 million, oh, that means they're having to fund and utilize funding to be able to pay for everything because they didn't even have profitability above and beyond their for their retainage. And it was just a big mess. And they were like, oh, there's nothing we can do. And so that's why we didn't end up working together. But it was just like, I'm like, this is like something has to change. Like, I know you guys say that there's nothing you can do, but I feel like that's a story you're telling yourself, because there's no way that other companies in your industry are doing this, because you're drowning and your competition isn't all drowning too.
Right. And there's always a way, and it's always the stories that we tell ourselves or that you're telling yourself. And, the bottom line is you have to be open to making the changes as the CEO. You have to be able to take actionable steps and be able to hear the constructive criticism or, the advice of an advisor, especially if they're talking to someone like you. They know there's a problem, and they know that they're not profiting and they're not doing what they need to be doing, and they are not sure how to fix it on their own, yet their only solution is, well, let me talk to this person and just tell them how it's hopeless. That's not a solution. You have to be able to talk to somebody, hear them, listen, implement. If you're not implementing, the entire thing is just an exercise in therapy.
I mean, sometimes it's not even therapy. Then it's just an exercise in frustration, at least for me. I mean, it was sad, and, I hope they're doing well, because I had, I had a million, I had a lot of great ideas on how to turn it around, but they didn't like any of those, and that's why we decided to not move forward. But the reality of the situation is, I don't believe in my heart of hearts that there is no options. I don't think that that's a truth. And so if you're saying to yourself, I don't have a choice when it comes to your business finances and all these things, you might not like the choices, but you still have them. And you might not want to do what needs to be done, but you still can. You might not know, and then you can get help, right? I mean, I've built an entire business on helping people find the options and figure it out and create that profitability. So, reach out.
Yeah.
But the truth is there is a way to be profitable no matter what you're doing.
Yeah. And sometimes you just don't like the things that you're being told, and that's fine. It happens on Shark Tank a lot. Guys will step back and they'll say, well, look, I don't believe you have a business right now.
You have a product.
You have a product. You don't have a business. And there's a very big difference there. And especially if you're in a service-based business, you either have a service that people want, or it's just, if you're not providing a solution for somebody, then it's not going to work as a business.
Yeah.
Every business is viable if you're willing to take the steps and willing to maybe shift from what your initial idea was for that business.
Yeah. You have to be, I think you have to be in love with your business enough to keep going, but you have to be in with it enough to recognize that sometimes it needs a lot of help, and that's okay.
Yeah. And if you want it to survive, that's really all you can do. Otherwise, you take the step back and just, you throw your hands up and say, okay, I guess this is it. Because if you're not willing to take the advice or the knowledge of somebody who is going to help the business, then it's pointless. And in that case, it sounds like that was kind of where it was, and that's fine. But you have to, if you want to survive, you have to hear some idea and be able to take and implement it and find your direction for your business. Because if you are so stuck in your ways and you're not willing to make any sort of, shifts in the primary direction of that company in order to make it profitable, then it's really not a business. It's just a hobby.
Yeah. I mean, and everything, right? Everything is an iteration. Your business is not going to be the same year after year after year after year after year. The world isn't the same. So if your business is the same 10 years from now, you have been left behind.
mean, we talk about a lot. Amazon. How did Amazon start out?
Yeah.
Right? They started off selling books. And, then
Now
it
they sell
became,
everything.
it was college books, and then it was a more expanded version of books, and now they literally sell everything. And a lot of the stuff that they sell is sold third party by somebody else who bought it, and is reselling it on Amazon. And that model would never have existed. Netflix went from being a service that mailed you DVDs, it was a movie rental system, into a streaming system, into now a full-on production company and streaming service. So you can see with any of these businesses, Facebook is another one. It started off as a communication between college students, and
you had to have a college email in order to get in. Yeah, it wouldn't let you in. I remember I wasn't in college. I was like, what the hell?
And then it became, this place where it's social media, and now it's grown into this giant where they have all these other
now it's
offshoots.
Meta, and they have so many different companies, and they own more than you think they do, and a whole bunch of stuff.
That's the thing. If you can see the largest companies in the world have gone through many iterations, which is very different from the initial vision of that company. And so you have to be willing, if you want to see that type of growth in your own company, you have to be willing to take a step back and change directions whenever it becomes necessary in order to keep growing.
Yeah, and just making sure that you are focusing on, what is the next iteration that will give me more profitability? Because at the end of the day, it really is about profit, or you're just running a hobby or a nonprofit. I don't know. But if you're running a nonprofit, then get your 501c3 and just roll with it. I'm just being serious, right? I mean, you can pay yourself well and still have a nonprofit. But that's another topic for another day. But
that's a whole other topic. But yeah.
Point is,
we've seen company after company do that and change the direction that they're going, and change, another one that I love is Nike. Especially going into the Jordan brand and changing the game and how those types of deals were done. And that is what made Jordan a billionaire. Seeing the way that they changed their focus from, if you've watched the movie, I think it's Air.
Yeah,
where they talk about how that deal came together and how they went from focusing on hiring 3 different endorsements for 3 different people to just dumping all of their resources into signing this one guy and giving him a deal unlike any other athlete had ever received.
Yeah, I mean, his own shoe, nobody had that.
Well, not only that, giving him royalties from every sale, that was the biggest key to making that deal work with him for a brand that wasn't the biggest shoe company at the time, and agreeing to pay his fines, because at the time the NBA said, at least 60% of the shoe had to be white, and the design that they absolutely loved was mostly red and black, Bulls colors. And they said, as part of your deal, we will pay the fines that the NBA gives you for wearing these shoes every game. And absolutely changed the entire shoe industry, where Jordans, I mean, there's a whole group of people they call shoe heads who are just into sneakers, just into Jordans in particular. And changed an entire industry by changing the way that their business was done. Yeah.
I mean, because Nike started as a running shoe company. They weren't a basketball shoe company. They were a running shoe company.
So it's like,
so that's the thing, right? So they were running shoes. And so even just entering into basketball shoes was a new iteration of the company, right? And so you think of Nike today, you couldn't even envision it without that. But that was not where the company started. So just really thinking about what is your next iteration and how can we prioritize that profitability so that we can fund that iteration.
Absolutely. So a lot of different ways to, improve that profitability and make sure that it stays, but you have to be willing to make the changes necessary within yourself and within your business to make sure that it happens.
Yeah. Nothing stays the same. And if you do, you get left behind. Well, thank you so much for joining us on the Blue Collar Wealth Club, and we'll catch you next time.